Hi, thanks for joining me today. Would you like to know a skill that means that you can really access your stepchild and how they might be feeling and thinking? Subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, and I'll let you know every time I post. There is a quote: "What cannot be talked about also cannot be put to rest. And if it is not, the wounds will fester from generation to generation." And that's a quote by Bruno Bettelheim. The thing about step families is that often they're not great at talking because there are so many divisions, and often it's just easier not to broach a topic, not to talk about things that matter, and just keep on bobbing along the surface, letting one day lead to the next, and then the children go and visit their other parent, or things move on, and you just bob along without really talking about things. It's difficult too because the children themselves often feel as though they can't talk about their other parent to the parent they're visiting at the moment, and that they can't really express their feelings about you, their step-parent, to their parent for fear of offending their parent. So instead of these things that are important being openly discussed and people know what each other feel, it all gets put under wraps. And the problem with that is that if you try and bottle up things you're thinking and feeling and suppress them, they don't dissipate. They just fester, and then they come out in other ways at other times, in ways like anger or frustration, or people can seem totally calm and accepting of a situation, and then they explode, and it came from nowhere. And you think, what was all that about? You think things were fine, and then they're definitely not fine, not at all fine. And these explosions can happen after years and years. Somebody can sit on something for 4 years and then suddenly there's an explosion. It's really, really difficult in step families, and it's difficult as the step parent in this situation, because often you come to the family later when lots of stuff has already happened and people are already not talking to each other, and you really aren't in a position or in a role where it's easy for you to sort of talk about stuff or introduce topics. But these sort of little silos can build up in a step family. It can be not only the other parent, but also the extended family. The relatives may have views about the family, and it creates division, and different parts of the family don't talk to other parts of the family. It can be really difficult, but at the end scenario is that you might find yourself in a situation where your family aren't really talking. They'll talk, but you never really get to know what somebody really feels or is thinking. Now, is this important? Well, if you take that quote, it is important, because what can happen is that when your stepchildren are adults, you might get the full force of their lack of being able to express themselves come back at you, or they may take it out on other friendships or relationships or work. It can really impinge on somebody's life long term. It can also affect how they are with their own children later growing up. It can really go down the generations. But what, as a step-parent, can you do about this? Well, you as a step-parent are not supposed to be or are expected to be the family's therapist. Therapy may be a solution if you're feeling somebody is really suffering with how they're feeling about the family, and that can be a very real help. But as a step parent on a more casual basis, this is what I think. People can open up when they feel as though they can trust you. So if they tell you something and they will experiment with you, they will trust you with something innocuous and not particularly important. But if you honour that trust and keep it safe for them, then they can feel as though they can trust you again. So, for example, your stepchild might talk to you about their other friends at school or somewhere else. First of all, if something like that crops up, pay attention. I would suggest stop what you're doing and really listen and pay attention. Make a note of names, places, dates, significant facts. Go away and start a notebook and write everything down so you can remember it. If a child trusts you with what they feel or think about a friend of theirs, which is not all good or something, and you keep that trust and follow up with them and say, how's it going with so-and-so when they next see you or in a month's time or something. Trust is a very important part to being able to open up and tell somebody. And that means that you don't go running off to somebody else and tell on them and say, well, your daughter thinks this about that. And then somebody else weighs in and your trust is blown. It's an openness that you're wanting, a trustingness, and then they can open up better. Another way to do it is to have fun. I know that this might seem a bit strange, but have fun with your stepchild. So do stuff that they like, or plan a day out, or do something that they really enjoy. And when somebody is really enjoying themselves, they can relax. And in laughter and in good times, you can sort of bond and a trust can open up between you, because if you're having fun, it's a kind of trusting kind of environment. You can't have fun if you're not trusting. So planning stuff where the children can relax in your company and really let go and show you who they really are when they're letting things rip and truly enjoying themselves. That too can be a way of getting them to be able to talk more openly about stuff. The other thing is that as a step parent, you are, if you can establish that relationship, in a unique situation, because you're not part of the original family. So you weren't part of originally whatever happened to the split up or the original whatever. And so you can be what they call a bonus parent in that sense, because you can be somebody on the outside that the child can tell, that can then remain safe. So you are in a unique situation if you can get there. When you come into a step family, you're always in a very different position from other people in the family. Once the other people in the family are in this family, it's their family. There's not a lot of movement that you can get from the status quo inside a family. Then when you come in as a step parent, you're changing the dynamic somewhat. And your perspective is different. It's one of forward looking. It's you found somebody that you think you love, and you're starting off on a new departure, if you like, a new life together, and you're looking forward to that. But if you can, try and see life from your stepchild's perspective, given what's happened to them in their lives. You have an insight because you have access to their inner life. And see if you can't really understand what their life might be like to live it from their point of view. And see if you can't learn the telltale signs of how they view their life from their behaviours and actions and what they say. So you can probably work out how they feel about you from the way they behave towards you and the way they behave towards other people, their other relatives, their siblings. You can sort of work out their perspective on the world, and that too can help you to sort of just nudge them by coming up with a comment every now and again, saying things like, golly, that must have been hard for you today to see so-and-so, or how did you find it when your brother did that? Because that might be difficult for you, so that you can sort of empathize, and then suddenly they twig that you are connecting with them and the way they might be feeling, and then they can confide in you a bit, or trust to confide in you if you first empathize with them. And finally, one of the greatest secrets is to remember. When somebody remembers something that you've told them before at a later date accurately, that's super impressive. I mean, just think yourself for a moment about somebody, maybe it's somebody at work, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's somebody else, and they say, oh, how did it go with that important meeting you were doing the other day, or when you were having to do this, and they've remembered back to something that you have told them that you might have been a bit worried about or had a concern about. Do that with your stepchildren. So say, how did it go at school that day when you were worried about X? Or, you told me about so-and-so and so-and-so. How did it end up, their argument? How did it settle? And the child goes, yes, there's continuity here. Somebody's interested in me. And that way you can get them to tell you more, and they trust you more. And then that generally leads to you understanding them and their perspective, and also being able to talk stuff out so they can talk their worries out, and therefore it can be addressed and laid to rest. If it's out of your body, it can be satisfied and you don't have to think about it anymore. If the child is bottling it up and suppressing it, and there's no communication and they can't talk to anybody, that's where it stays until it comes out in a different form, projected towards somebody else. Those are just ideas. It's quite a big demand for a step-parent to be that person. But you're also in a unique position and in a very valuable position. And this is really important work, not just for the stepchild, but for you too, because it can be that kind of thing that means that the anger and frustration gets projected to you, the step-parent. And if you can access it and get them to trust you to tell you stuff, all of that could possibly be avoided. We run workshops, sessions, an email response service, and we write booklets. Look at the description box below for links to our social media and website.